My child, stop for a moment. Everything else waiting for your attention today can wait a little longer. I want you to actually hear what I am about to say rather than let it pass through your attention the way so many ordinary things already have today. You did not arrive at this message by pure accident. Something quieter than chance drew your attention here at this exact point in your life, and I want you to trust that pull rather than dismiss it as nothing. It is not nothing. It is the beginning of something you have needed to hear for longer than you have admitted, even to yourself. I want to speak honestly about what you have been carrying, because I do not think you have let many people see the full size of it. You have smiled through days when something heavier sat underneath. You have shown up for responsibilities while feeling genuinely depleted. You have carried concerns too complicated to explain in a single sentence, and you have done most of it quietly, without complaint, because you did not want to become a burden to the people around you. I want you to know that none of that has gone unnoticed. You have not been distant from the eyes that matter, even in your hardest, most tired moments. Difficulty has a way of stripping away everything, except the most honest parts of a person. And honesty, even when unpolished and full of doubt, is worth paying attention to. I want to talk today about something I want you to think of simply as a key, not a literal object, but a single, honest response that has the capacity to open something in your life that has stayed closed for a long time. I do not want to overstate this or make it sound more mysterious than it actually is. What I mean is this. There is likely one specific thing in your life right now, one honest choice, one honest conversation, one honest acknowledgement to yourself that you have been avoiding, and that avoidance has been quietly keeping a door closed that could otherwise begin to open. I want you to sit with that possibility rather than rushing past it. What is the one thing you already know, somewhere inside yourself, that you have been putting off facing directly? It might be a decision about a relationship that has needed honest attention for a while. It might be a habit or a pattern you already recognize is not serving you well, even though you keep returning to it. It might simply be an honest acknowledgement of how tired or how discouraged you actually are. An acknowledgement you have been avoiding because saying it out loud, even to yourself, felt like it would make it too real. I want to be clear that I am not asking you to solve this thing entirely today. That would be an unreasonable expectation, and I do not deal in unreasonable expectations. What I am asking is much smaller and much more achievable. I am asking you to name it honestly, at least to yourself right now, in this quiet moment, rather than continuing to let it operate quietly in the background of your life without ever being acknowledged directly. I want to talk about why this kind of honest naming matters so much, because I do not want this to remain simply a comforting suggestion without any real substance behind it. Many of the things that keep a person stuck are not stuck because the person lacks the capacity to address them. They are stuck because they have never been named clearly and directly. And something unnamed is very difficult to actually work on. The moment you name something honestly, even quietly, even only to yourself, you shift your relationship to it. It stops being a vague, formless weight and becomes something specific enough to actually begin addressing. I want to speak now about the specific fear that naming this thing honestly might make it worse, might force you to deal with something you would rather continue avoiding. I understand that fear completely. Avoidance often feels safer in the short term because it postpones the discomfort of actually facing something directly. But I want you to consider that the discomfort of avoidance, spread out quietly over a long period of time, often ends up costing more than the discomfort of facing something honestly would have cost you all at once. Avoidance rarely makes a problem disappear. It usually just makes the eventual reckoning larger and more complicated than it needed to be. I want to talk now about what has actually been happening beneath the surface of your life during this long, difficult stretch, because I think you deserve to understand it more clearly rather than simply being told to keep waiting without explanation. You have developed a deeper capacity for patience than you likely had before this season began. You have developed a clearer sense of what actually matters to you, refined through wanting something and not receiving it immediately. You have developed resilience specifically through continuing to function even when circumstances offered very little visible encouragement to do so. I want you to understand that these developments are not separate from whatever comes next in your life. They are the actual foundation that makes receiving and sustaining something genuinely good possible. The version of you standing here right now, shaped by genuine difficulty, is considerably more prepared to receive something significant than you may currently give yourself credit for. I want to talk about the specific opposition that tends to increase right before something meaningful shifts, because I do not want you to mistake resistance for proof that nothing good is coming. Sometimes discouragement grows louder specifically because you are closer to a breakthrough than you realize, and whatever has been working against your progress is making one final push before losing its grip entirely. I am not telling you this so you treat every hard day as evidence of some grand spiritual battle. Ordinary life is genuinely difficult sometimes, in simple human ways that do not require a dramatic explanation. But I want you to hold this possibility gently, so that if resistance does show up during a season of real change, you do not automatically assume it proves nothing is happening. I want to speak now about what it actually means for a door to be prepared and waiting for a specific key in a way that goes beyond simply comforting language. There is a real connection between sustained honesty combined with sustained effort and the eventual arrival of genuine opportunity, though that connection rarely operates in the immediate transactional way people sometimes expect. It functions more like patient cultivation, where consistent, honest effort over time creates conditions that eventually allow genuinely significant opportunities to become both visible and accessible to you. I want you to consider that everything you have built through this difficult season was not simply preparing you to endure more difficulty indefinitely. It was preparing you to actually recognize and receive genuine opportunity when it finally arrives, with real capacity rather than exhausted disbelief. A person who has given up entirely on hope often struggles to fully receive good things even when they finally arrive, because they have trained themselves so thoroughly to expect disappointment that genuine opportunity feels unfamiliar, even slightly unbelievable. I want to talk now about what specifically might begin shifting once you take this one honest step, because I do not want this message to remain entirely abstract. You may notice gradually a growing sense of clarity about decisions that previously felt confusing or overwhelming. You may notice conversations landing differently than similar conversations have landed before. You may notice opportunities appearing that specifically require the kind of resilience and patience you have already developed through this difficult season. I want you to pay attention to these shifts as they begin appearing, not with anxious scrutiny that examines every small development for proof that everything has changed, but with a kind of quiet readiness that simply notices and receives what arrives without demanding it conform to a specific dramatic shape. I want to speak about comparison for a moment, because I suspect you have occasionally wondered why other people's circumstances seem to resolve more quickly or more visibly than your own, despite your consistent effort to maintain hope through genuine difficulty. Other people's timelines are not a measure of the value or the eventual outcome of your own sustained hope. What has been quietly building in you does not need to match anyone else's visible progress in order to eventually matter in your own life, in your own time, in a way specifically suited to what you have actually developed through this particular stretch of waiting. I want to speak honestly about the specific loneliness that can accompany maintaining hope when the people around you do not fully understand or share that same commitment to trust through difficulty. There is a particular kind of isolation in continuing to believe when others around you have already moved on to resignation or cynicism about similar circumstances in their own lives. That loneliness is real, and it does not need to be minimized. But this particular season of sustained, sometimes solitary hope is building something in you that will eventually connect you with other people who share that same capacity. I want to talk now about forgiveness, because I suspect it connects to at least part of what has been unsettled in you lately, and it may even be the specific key I mentioned earlier for some of you reading this. Forgiveness does not mean pretending something did not hurt you, and it does not mean allowing someone back into your life who has shown no real change or accountability. It simply means loosening the grip that a past wound has over your present peace. You are able to release someone from your resentment without necessarily releasing them back into your daily life. Those are genuinely two separate decisions, and you are allowed to make one without automatically making the other. If there is a specific situation you have been quietly holding on to, even a low simmering resentment you rarely mention out loud, consider setting down a portion of that weight today, not because the original situation was fair, but because that resentment has likely been costing you more over time than it has been costing anyone else. I want to speak about the version of yourself that existed before certain hard seasons changed you, because I suspect there are days you quietly miss that earlier version. The one who trusted more easily, who worried less about being hurt again, who had not yet learned to brace for disappointment before it even arrived. You are not required to return to exactly who you were before, as though everything you have lived through since then was simply damage that needs undoing. Some of what you have become through hardship is genuinely more solid than what existed before it, even if it does not always feel that way in quieter, more vulnerable moments. I want to address the fear of hoping again after being disappointed too many times, because that fear makes complete sense given everything you have walked through. Hope that has been crushed repeatedly starts to feel dangerous, almost reckless. But protecting yourself from hope entirely does not actually protect you from anything real. A life lived without any hope at all is not actually safer. It is simply smaller. I am not asking you to hope recklessly, ignoring genuine warning signs or real patterns from your past. I am asking you to leave a small amount of room for the possibility that not everything you hope for is destined to be disappointed, the way some of your past hopes were. Some of what you are hoping for now is genuinely going to arrive, and I would rather you notice it clearly when it does than have trained yourself so thoroughly against hope that you cannot recognize a real answer, even standing directly in front of you. I want to speak now about what it means to actually trust a process you cannot fully see the end of yet. Trust like that is difficult, especially for someone who has learned through hard experience that things do not always work out the way they were hoped to. I am not asking for blind trust that ignores reality or refuses to acknowledge genuine difficulty. I am asking for a steadier kind of trust, one that can hold both truths at once, that things are genuinely hard right now, and that something meaningful is still unfolding underneath the difficulty, even before it becomes fully visible. I want to talk about patience for a moment, not as passive waiting, but as an active, ongoing choice to keep paying honest attention even when clarity is not immediately available. Real patience involves continued honest attention alongside continued waiting, and it deserves genuine respect rather than being dismissed as simply doing nothing while time passes. I want to speak about identity for a moment, because I think a great deal of what has weighed on you connects back to quiet uncertainty about who you actually are, underneath your circumstances, your responsibilities. Your daily routine circumstances shift constantly, but the core of who you actually are has remained steady beneath all of it, even during the seasons that felt most exhausting. I want to speak about community as well, because I think isolation has likely made this season feel heavier than it needed to feel. Even a small amount of genuine connection, a single honest conversation, can meaningfully lighten a burden that feels unbearable when carried entirely alone. If you have been isolating yourself, consider reaching toward at least one person you trust in the coming days. I want to talk now about gratitude, not as an obligation but as something genuinely useful moving forward. Gratitude tends to widen a person's capacity to notice good things as they actually arrive, rather than remaining so fixated on what has not yet happened that the things which have already begun shifting go unnoticed. I want to invite you to notice honestly whatever small good things are actually present in your life right now, even amid everything that remains difficult. I want to speak plainly about self-compassion as well, because I suspect you have been considerably harder on yourself throughout this long season than you would ever be towards someone else demonstrating the exact same sustained hope under the exact same pressure. If someone else had walked through everything you have walked through, you would likely admire them without hesitation. I want you to consider extending that same admiration toward yourself, rather than continuing to minimize what your own sustained hope has actually required and accomplished. I want to talk about rest now because I think you have likely postponed it more than you should have, believing that maintaining hope meant never fully acknowledging how tired the process of sustaining it has actually made you. Rest is not a betrayal of the hope you have built. It is what allows that hope to continue sustainably rather than eventually collapsing under its own accumulated weight. I want you to give yourself permission to actually rest, not as a reward you have to earn through more sustained belief, but simply as a necessary part of continuing to be who you have already shown yourself capable of being. I want to speak now about what it actually looks like, practically, to take hold of this one honest key and use it, because I do not want this message to remain entirely abstract. It might look like finally sending the message you have been drafting and deleting for weeks. It might look like sitting quietly and admitting to yourself, in specific words rather than vague feelings, exactly what has been weighing on you. It might look like making one small decision you have been postponing, not because you have suddenly gained total clarity about everything, but because you have decided that continued postponement is no longer serving you. I want to talk about what practical steps might genuinely help you use this key well. First, be specific rather than general, vague intentions to be more honest or more decisive rarely produce actual change. Specific intentions tied to a particular situation and a particular next action tend to produce considerably more movement. Second, choose a modest first step rather than an overwhelming one. The goal is not to resolve everything in a single dramatic gesture. It is to take one honest action that begins shifting the pattern that has kept this particular door closed. Third, expect some discomfort as part of the process rather than treating discomfort as evidence that you have made a mistake. Genuine honesty, especially after a long stretch of avoidance, often feels uncomfortable at first, even when it is exactly the right thing to do. Fourth, be patient with the fact that using this key does not necessarily open the door instantly. Sometimes a single honest step is simply the beginning of a longer process, rather than the entire solution in itself. I want to speak now about the specific fear that using this key might not actually work, that you might take the honest step and still find the door closed, the situation unresolved, the difficulty still present. I want to address that fear honestly, rather than promise you a guaranteed outcome that might not be entirely truthful. I cannot promise you that every specific situation will resolve exactly the way you hope once you take this honest step. Life does not always work that predictably, but I can tell you that continuing to avoid the honest step guarantees the door remains closed, while taking the honest step at least creates the possibility of it opening, even if the exact outcome remains uncertain. I want to talk now about what has actually been happening beneath the surface during this long season of avoidance, because avoidance itself often serves a purpose, even when it eventually needs to be set aside. Avoidance frequently develops as a protective response to genuine difficulty, a way of managing overwhelming circumstances by simply not looking directly at the hardest parts of them. I do not want you to feel ashamed of whatever avoidance you have practiced. It made sense given what you were dealing with. But I do want you to recognize that the protective function avoidance once served may have run its course, and continuing to rely on it now may be costing you more than it is protecting you. I want to speak about the specific relationships in your life that this particular key might be most relevant to, because I suspect for many of you reading this, the door in question involves another person rather than only an internal decision. Consider whether there is a specific relationship where honest communication has been missing for a while, where you have been managing your own feelings quietly rather than expressing them directly, where a conversation that needs to happen has been repeatedly postponed. I want you to notice honestly what has kept that conversation from happening. Perhaps fear of the other person's reaction. Perhaps fear that voicing your feelings will make the relationship feel more fragile rather than more solid. Perhaps simple exhaustion, a sense that you do not currently have the energy required for a difficult conversation. All of these reasons make sense. None of them are moral failures. But I want you to consider gently whether the cost of continuing to postpone that conversation has become greater than the cost of actually having it. I want to talk about what it means to have a difficult conversation well, rather than either avoiding it entirely or approaching it in a way that makes things worse. Having a difficult conversation well usually involves speaking honestly about your own experience, rather than only accusing the other person, staying open to hearing their perspective even while expressing your own clearly, and accepting that the conversation may not resolve everything immediately, even if it is handled as well as possible. A conversation handled honestly and with care, even if it does not immediately solve everything, tends to open more doors than continued silence ever could. I want to speak now about the specific key that might be relevant if your situation involves not another person, but a decision you have been avoiding, a choice between two paths, a commitment you have been unwilling to fully make. I want you to consider, honestly, what has kept you from making that decision. Perhaps fear of choosing wrong, perhaps a hope that circumstances will somehow resolve the decision for you, removing the need to choose at all. perhaps simply the discomfort of closing off one possibility in order to commit fully to another. I want to gently challenge the assumption that avoiding a decision protects you from making a wrong choice. In many cases, avoiding the decision simply means the decision continues to be made by default, by whatever direction inertia happens to carry you, rather than by your own deliberate choice. Making an actual decision, even an imperfect one, tends to produce more clarity and more forward movement than continuing to avoid deciding at all. I want to talk now about what it might mean to trust yourself enough to actually make this decision, rather than waiting indefinitely for complete certainty before you are willing to act. Complete certainty rarely arrives before a decision. It tends to arrive gradually afterward as you begin to see how the decision actually plays out and adjust as needed. Waiting for total certainty before deciding anything often means waiting indefinitely, because that level of certainty simply is not available in advance for most significant decisions. I want to speak about the specific relief that becomes available once you finally use this key, whatever specific form it takes in your particular situation. That relief often arrives not because the entire situation is immediately resolved, but because the exhausting weight of continued avoidance finally lifts. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes specifically from avoiding something, a background hum of unresolved tension that persists even during moments that have nothing directly to do with the thing being avoided. Taking the honest step, even if it does not immediately solve everything, tends to quiet that background hum considerably. I want to close this reflection by speaking directly to whatever specific hesitation is loudest in you right now, in this exact moment, as you consider what this key might actually be for you. Whatever that particular hesitation is, it does not have final authority over what actually happens next in your life. Hesitation is understandable, and it often feels protective, but it is not always accurate about what would actually happen if you took the step it is warning you against. You are allowed to feel that hesitation honestly while still choosing to take the next step forward despite it. So take one more slow breath before you move forward into whatever comes next in your day. You have carried this particular weight for long enough. Something lighter is genuinely allowed to begin now. Even quietly, even gradually, once you take the one honest step available to you, and you are allowed to let yourself believe that one honest choice at a time. I want to talk more specifically now about what happens after you take this step, because I do not want to leave you only with the encouragement to act without any guidance about what follows. Once you have taken the honest step, whatever specific form it took, I want you to resist the temptation to immediately judge whether it worked based on an instant, dramatic result. Genuine change, even change set in motion by a single honest decision, usually unfolds gradually rather than all at once. Give the process some room to actually develop before deciding whether the step you took was worthwhile. I want to speak about the specific fear that people around you might react poorly to your newfound honesty, particularly if that honesty involves saying something you have kept quiet for a long time. Some people will genuinely respond well to your honesty, appreciating finally understanding where you actually stand. Others may react with surprise, defensiveness, or even initial disappointment. I want you to prepare yourself gently for the possibility of a mixed reaction, rather than expecting universal appreciation for finally speaking honestly. A reasonable, even positive reaction from most people does not require a perfect reaction from everyone. I want to talk now about what legacy might mean in the context of finally using this key, because I think you have likely underestimated how the way you handle this particular moment might influence other areas of your life going forward. Once you have practiced honest action in one specific area, that practice tends to make honest action slightly easier in other areas as well. You are not simply solving one specific situation, you are building a broader capacity for honesty and decisive action that will likely serve you well beyond this particular moment. I want to speak plainly about self-compassion once more, because I suspect you have been considerably harder on yourself about this particular avoidance than you would ever be towards someone else in the exact same situation. If a friend told you they had been avoiding a similar conversation or decision for a similar length of time, you would likely respond with understanding rather than harsh judgment. I want you to consider extending that same understanding toward yourself, even as you also gently encourage yourself to finally take the step you have been avoiding. I want to close this message the way I began it, by reminding you that none of what you read here was accidental. Whatever specific door has stayed closed in your life, however long it has stayed that way, there is likely a specific honest key available to you. One honest step you have been quietly avoiding that could begin to shift things considerably. You do not need to have every answer today. You only need to take that one honest step in front of you, whatever specific shape it takes, and trust that the step after that will become visible once you have moved. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop just slightly from wherever they have been holding tension without you fully noticing. You have made it through every single day up to this one, without exception, even the days you were certain you could not. That track record means something. Carry it with you gently into whatever comes next, one honest step at a time, for as long as it takes to feel solid beneath your feet again. I want to speak a little more before I let this close, because I do not think one closing thought is enough to carry everything you need for the road ahead. I want to talk about the specific weight of carrying something quietly for a long time, without anyone around you fully understanding its size. There is a particular kind of loneliness in that, one that has nothing to do with being physically alone, and everything to do with feeling unseen even while surrounded by people who genuinely care about you. You have likely smiled through conversations while carrying something heavier underneath, not out of dishonesty, but because explaining the full depth of it felt exhausting, or because you were not sure anyone would actually understand even if you tried. I want you to know that being misunderstood by people who love you does not mean you have been truly alone in what you carried. It simply means human understanding has limits, even within good and caring relationships. Every version of your story that never found the right words, every feeling too complicated to explain in a normal conversation, none of it went unnoticed. It was known fully, even in the moments you felt most invisible to everyone around you. I want to speak now about the small, quiet acts of resilience you have shown that likely went completely unrecognized by anyone else. The mornings you got up anyway, even when everything in you wanted to stay under the covers, the responsibilities you kept fulfilling even while feeling emotionally depleted, the kindness you continued extending to other people even during weeks when you had very little kindness left over for yourself. None of that was small. It takes real strength to keep functioning while carrying real weight. And that strength deserves acknowledgement, even if you have rarely given it to yourself. I want to talk honestly about anger as well, because I think some of what you have carried was not only grief or fear, but genuine anger, at situations that felt unfair, at people who let you down, at a version of your life that did not unfold the way you once expected it to. Anger is not automatically wrong or unfaithful. It is often simply evidence that something mattered deeply to you, that a real hope was genuinely disappointed. I am not asking you to suppress that anger or pretend it does not exist. I am asking you to let it exist honestly, without letting it become the permanent lens through which you view everything ahead of you. I want to talk about the version of yourself that existed before certain hard seasons changed you, because I know there are days you quietly miss that earlier version, the one who trusted more easily, who laughed more freely, who had not yet learned to brace for disappointment before it arrived. I want to offer you a different way of thinking about that earlier self. You are not required to return to exactly who you were before, as though everything you have lived through since then was simply damage to undo. Some of what you have become through hardship is actually more solid than what existed before it, even if it does not always feel that way. I want to speak now about what it means to actually trust a process you cannot fully see the end of yet once more, because it deserves repeated emphasis rather than being said only once and left behind. Trust like that is built slowly, through small moments of choosing to keep going even without complete certainty, rather than through one dramatic decision made once and never revisited again. Every time you choose to keep showing up despite uncertainty, that trust becomes a little sturdier, a little more able to hold you steady the next time doubt returns, as it likely will at some point along the way. I want to talk about patience once more as well, not as passive waiting, but as an active, ongoing choice to keep moving forward even when results are not immediately visible. Patience is often misunderstood as simply enduring without complaint, but real patience involves continued effort alongside continued waiting. It means still showing up, still trying, still taking small steps forward, even while the larger outcome remains unclear. I want to speak honestly about setbacks once more, because I do not want to suggest that once real change begins, everything moves forward smoothly without any further difficulty. Setbacks are a normal part of almost every meaningful process of growth, not evidence that the growth itself was never real to begin with. If you experience a setback during this season, even after genuinely believing something had shifted, resist the urge to interpret that setback as proof that nothing actually changed. Growth is rarely a straight upward line. I want to talk about identity once more because I think a great deal of what has weighed on you connects back to quiet uncertainty about who you actually are underneath your circumstances, your job, your relationships, your daily responsibilities. It is easy to let external circumstances define your sense of self, especially during long seasons of struggle, when it can feel like your entire identity has narrowed down to simply surviving whatever is currently in front of you. Circumstances shift constantly, but the core of who you actually are has remained steady underneath all of it, even during the seasons that felt most destabilizing. I want to speak about community once more as well, because I think isolation has likely made everything feel heavier than it needed to feel. Even a small amount of genuine connection, a single honest conversation, a single relationship where you do not have to perform constant strength, can meaningfully lighten a burden that feels unbearable when carried entirely alone. If you have been isolating yourself, even unintentionally, during this difficult season, consider reaching toward at least one person you trust, even in a small way. I want to close this extended reflection by speaking directly, one final time, to whatever specific fear or doubt is loudest in you right now, in this exact moment, as you finish reading. Whatever that particular fear is, it does not have final authority over what actually happens next in your life. Fear is loud, and it often feels urgent and convincing, but it is not always accurate, and it is not always predictive of what will genuinely unfold. You are allowed to feel that fear honestly while still choosing to take the next step forward despite it. So take one more slow breath before you close this message and move forward into whatever comes next in your day. You have carried enough for long enough. Something lighter is genuinely allowed to begin now, even quietly, even gradually, even before you can fully explain everything that has shifted inside you. Something has changed, and you are allowed to let yourself believe that, one honest step at a time, for as long as it takes to feel solid beneath your feet again. There is one final thread I want to leave with you because I think it ties everything else together in a way that might make the whole message easier to carry once you step away from it. Everything shared here rests on one simple assumption: that you are worth this much attention, this much care, this much patience extended toward finally taking the one honest step that has been waiting for you. You are not required to prove your worth through performance in order to deserve rest or good things arriving in your life. Worth is not a reward given out for flawless behavior. It exists underneath performance entirely, present even during your least productive, least impressive seasons. I want to leave you with a simple, honest picture to hold on to in the days ahead. Picture yourself a year from now, looking back at this exact moment, remembering the specific door that had stayed closed for so long. Imagine that future version of yourself being able to say honestly that something did shift after this, not necessarily instantly, not necessarily dramatically, but genuinely because you finally took the one honest step that had been waiting for you all along. That future is not guaranteed simply by reading these words once and moving on immediately. It requires you to actually take the step, whatever specific shape it takes for you. But it is genuinely available to you, starting from wherever you currently stand, regardless of how long this particular door has stayed closed. Remember, one final time, that you have already survived every difficult day up to this exact point in your life, without a single exception. That fact alone deserves more credit than you likely give it in your quieter, more discouraged moments. Whatever specific difficulty you are currently facing, you already have direct evidence, built from your own lived experience, that you are capable of enduring hard things and eventually finding your way through them, even when you cannot yet see exactly how that will happen this time. Carry that evidence with you gently as you move forward from this moment, not as pressure to perform resilience perfectly, but as a quiet, steady reminder available to you whenever doubt returns. You have already built something real. Whatever comes next simply continues to reveal what was already true about you long before circumstances began confirming it more visibly. Let this be the moment you finally take hold of the key that has been waiting for you gently, honestly, one small step at a time, trusting that the door will open in its own time once you have actually turned it. That has always been enough to open what needed opening, even during the hardest seasons. And it remains enough today as well. Wherever you are reading this, whatever room, whatever moment of your day this happens to be, let it settle into you fully before you move on to whatever comes next. You are not required to feel completely different immediately. You are simply invited to remain a little more aware of the one honest step available to you, trusting that once you take it, whatever is meant to unfold will continue to reveal itself patiently, one honest day at a time, starting from right now. I want to speak a little more before I let this close completely, because I think there is real value in staying here a bit longer, rather than moving too quickly toward the end. I want to talk about the specific difference between a key that opens a door gently and a key that gets forced against something that was never meant to open that way. Sometimes people mistake urgency for permission to force a situation before it is ready, pushing a conversation before the other person has any capacity to actually hear it, or making a decision impulsively simply to escape the discomfort of continued uncertainty, rather than because the decision itself has actually become clear. I want you to distinguish, honestly, between the quiet readiness that comes from finally facing something you have avoided and the frantic urgency that sometimes masquerades as readiness, but is actually just exhaustion wanting relief at any cost. The first tends to produce steadier, more lasting results. The second often produces a temporary release of tension, followed by new complications that were not fully considered in the rush to act. I am not asking you to delay indefinitely out of excessive caution. I am simply asking you to notice which kind of urgency you are actually feeling before you act on it. I want to talk about what it means to prepare yourself internally before taking this step, rather than treating preparation itself as another form of avoidance. There is a real difference between genuinely preparing, gathering your thoughts, considering how to express something honestly and kindly, deciding what you actually want to say or do, and using the appearance of preparation as an excuse to keep postponing the actual step indefinitely. I want you to notice, honestly, which of these you have actually been doing. If you have already prepared considerably, if you already know largely what you want to say or do, further preparation may simply be another form of the same avoidance you are trying to move past. I want to speak about the specific courage required to act without a guarantee of a particular outcome, because I think this deserves real acknowledgement, rather than being treated as simply obvious or easy. Taking an honest step when you cannot be certain how it will be received, or exactly what will happen afterward, requires a kind of courage that does not always feel like courage in the moment. It often feels more like simple discomfort, pushed through despite uncertainty. But that discomfort, pushed through honestly, is precisely what courage actually looks like in ordinary life, far more often than the dramatic, cinematic version of courage people sometimes imagine. I want to talk now about what specifically might help you gather that courage in the coming days. If you have identified the key but have not yet actually used it, consider writing down, even briefly, exactly what you want to say or do, so that the thought exists somewhere concrete, rather than only circling in your mind. Consider choosing a specific, modest time frame for taking the step, rather than leaving it indefinitely open-ended. Consider telling at least one trusted person that you intend to take this step, which often creates a gentle accountability that makes follow-through more likely. I want to speak honestly about what happens if you take the step, and the result is disappointing, because I do not want to promise you only positive outcomes, when reality is genuinely more complicated than that. Sometimes an honest conversation reveals that a relationship cannot be repaired the way you hoped. Sometimes an honest decision leads to a result that is difficult in its own new way, even if it is better than continued avoidance. I want you to know that even a disappointing result from an honest step is usually more valuable, in the long run, than the ongoing cost of continued avoidance. At minimum, you gain clarity, and clarity, even difficult clarity, tends to be more livable than prolonged uncertainty. I want to close this extended reflection with one final, practical thought. Whatever specific key you have identified through this message, whatever honest step has been quietly waiting for your attention, I want you to choose one small, concrete action related to it that you can take within the next few days. Not months from now, not someday, but genuinely soon that concrete time frame matters. Intentions without a time frame tend to remain intentions indefinitely. A specific, modest deadline tends to actually produce movement. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop just slightly from wherever they have been holding tension without you fully noticing it. You have already demonstrated through everything you have survived that you are capable of facing difficult things honestly when you choose to. Carry that capability with you gently into whatever comes next, trusting that the key you have identified is genuinely within your reach, and that using it, however uncomfortable it feels at first, is likely to open something that continued avoidance never could.